Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us recite from the verse 10. Nadveshtya kushalam karma, nadveshtya kushalam kushalena anusajjate, tyagi sattva samavishtaha, medhavi chinna samshayaha, नहि देह भृता शक्यं त्यक्तुं कर्माण्यशेषतः यस्तु कर्मफलत्यागी सत्यागीत्यभिधीयते. So continuing the discussion on this topic of sannyasa, we said the word sannyasa is used by Lord Krishna primarily in the sense of the one who is free from the sense of doership, and therefore even while appearing to perform action, one who does not perform action. By not performing action, it is not meant that the person is totally inactive or not doing anything at all at the level of body or the senses, because that is not a problem at all. Really, action can be a problem whenever there is this abhimana or this self-consciousness that I am performing action. There is self-consciousness that I am responsible for this action. So it is self-consciousness that really creates the stresses and burden that action has. In a way, therefore, Lord Krishna is telling us here how to perform, how to conduct everything, how to perform all the actions, how to fulfill all whatever it is required to be done, how to do it without any stress at all. And that is what Lord Krishna is teaching. That the wise person who has become free from this notion that I am a doer, because it is a notion, this has been explained earlier, it will explain right away in this chapter also, as to how this conclusion on my part that I is performing action is not a reality about I. The reality about I is that I is ever actionless. It is in presence of I, in presence of self, that all actions get performed, and that all the activities belong at the level of the body, at the level of mind, sense organs. This is what was said and will be said. And therefore, this sense of doership, that is, this notion or conclusion that I am performing action, arises from identification with this body-mind complex, which is where the doership is really involved, and on account of identification with that, I superimpose a doership of one myself and thus entertain a notion or a burden that I am the doer of the action. That is where the stress begins. Primarily, the stress begins from this point that I am the doer of the action. And then the stress will increase as I take more and more responsibility. As I look upon myself responsible for success or for failure, then further stresses come. Then when I brand myself as a success or failure, yet further stresses come. So first of all, identification with this body-mind complex, then identification with karma or the action, and then identification with the consequence of action, namely karma phala. See how the identification slowly spreads. And then identification with what happens as a result of karma. For example, that I take myself to be the doer of an action, that arises from identification with this upadhi. And then I identify the action and say that I am responsible for that. I am the one who performs the action. It is I. It is my abilities, my strengths, my capabilities, my this and this and that I, such and such, is performing the action. That means I take the total credit for performing the action. And subsequently, identification with the result of the action, that I produce the result. And therefore, I am successful or I am failure. So stress level is increasing as the identification progresses, the level of stress also progresses. And most stress comes on account of identifying with the result, of superimposing on myself the responsibility of a result. Lord Krishna does tell us to take responsibility in life. Karmanyavadhikaraste, hey Arjuna, you must take the responsibility for action, which is stress, but we have to take right now. In order to ultimately become free from this notion that I am the doer, discovering the fact that I am actionless, it is necessary to perform actions properly before discovering that I am free from action. I am free from the agency of action. So first lesson that Lord Krishna gives us is perform the actions properly. Because it is on account of performing actions improperly that the various raga dveshas, likes and dislikes, and the consequent stresses and complexes have been accumulated. And therefore, the way to get rid of the raga dveshas or the complexes is to perform the actions in the right way. And the way to do it is to take the responsibility for action. And the way to take responsibility is to perform the action that is right. And what is meant by the right action is what a given situation calls for, what is becoming of me in a given situation. Because in every situation I am required to perform a certain role, I am required to respond to the situation in a certain way, and I do it in a very dignified manner, in keeping with my dignity, in becoming of me. And therefore, performing actions in keeping with the basic values of life is the first responsibility. That I do unto others what I expect from them, I do not do unto them what I do not want them to do. Ideally, therefore, I place myself in the position of the other person before responding to that person, and I ask myself what it is that I would expect if I were in that position, and I attempt to respond in that way. This is an attempt. When I can spontaneously do, I am a wise person. Lord Krishna describes wisdom in many ways in the Bhagavad Gītā. And one way of describing the wisdom, or spontaneity, or freedom, let us say, one beautiful way of describing freedom is that the wise person does what? So wise person places himself in the position of others and then acts. That means he never hurts anybody, because one cannot hurt oneself. Only one thing that I cannot hurt is myself. No, Swami, that also people do, they hurt themselves. But not the self that is Satchidananda, That's it. Even if I hurt this body for some reason or the other, so for some madness, then also because there is a self that I do not want to hurt, But I cannot hurt myself, and therefore, if I place myself in the position of others and then respond accordingly, then I cannot hurt others also. In fact, inasmuch as a wise person sees his own self everywhere, therefore he can never hurt. And therefore he becomes a non-violent person in a primary sense. Then the seekers or aspirants should seek to become non-violent. And that is what we would call taking responsibility for my action, that my action should be a non-violent action. That by my action I do not hurt anybody. I do not trample upon the rights of other people. I do not progress at the cost of other people. I have the freedom to pursue my goals, no doubt, but then not at the cost of somebody else. That kind of a sensitivity. So that is what is called the responsibility. The responsibility comes from sensitivity, and Lord Krishna teaches us the sensitivity. That you are not an isolated person. You are in fact part of the whole universe, interconnected and interdependent. And just as you depend upon the whole universe, the universe also depends upon you. And therefore, what you do, what you say, what you think is something very important. It affects the whole world. And therefore, you must know that and you must act accordingly. So this is taking responsibility for action. Whenever we have to take responsibility, there is stress. But we have to accept this stress in order to ultimately become free from the stress. So righteous stress is accepted in order to become free from the stress. Because stress is there anyway. But this will be called righteous stress. I mean, if you can use that expression. Like they could talk of righteous anger, Similarly, righteous stress. Righteous anger we have not accepted as yet, but righteous stress we accept. But there is a further stress that comes on account of identifying the result that we can very well give up. That we should take responsibility in our life, but responsibility which belongs to me and not responsibility that does not belong to me, and the result is not something that is determined by me, and therefore Lord Krishna says, do not assume responsibility for result. That is ma phaleshu kadachana. So taking responsibility of result is called attachment to the result. Because identification of the result, that I am the producer of the result, which is not the case. So all of this has been said. But then ultimately becoming free from the sense of doership is the freedom from the stress altogether. And therefore when it is said that the wise person does not perform any action, it only means that even when he appears to perform all the actions, there is no burden at all, there is no stress, because he is spontaneously acting, he is spontaneously in tune with the order, and therefore you can say the order is acting through him. That a seeker or aspirant is the one who has to be deliberate in trying to be in tune with the order. Because I have tendencies such as likes and dislikes which have which will violate the order. So if I come under the sway of my likes and dislikes, in all probability I will violate the order, and therefore as a seeker I must be deliberate to make sure that my actions are in keeping with the order, and that requires me to keep my likes and dislikes or my impulses under check, under restraint. So I restrain my impulses of anger and resentment and jealousy and retaliation and things like that, and make sure that I do what is right for me to do. That is karma yoga. But as I said, so that is reduced stress. So samsari is the maximum stress. Who is samsari? The one who identifies the result. Maximum stress. A karma yogi is reduced stress. The one who will identify the action. A devotee is yet reduced stress. Karma yoga devotee. One who looks upon himself as an instrument of God. And finally, wise man has no stress at all, because even while performing action, he does not perform an action. He has really become free from all responsibility. So Lord Krishna teaches us that we should take responsibility in order to become free from responsibility. Because responsibility means stress. Lord Krishna says, I am really doing everything, understand? So he showed in the 11th chapter that he does everything. Yoga kshemam vahamyaham. I am the one who actually sustains yoga and kshema. Yoga is getting what I do not have, what I require, and kshema is protecting what I have. Lord Krishna says, yoga kshemam vahamyaham. I am the one that actually bears the yoga and kshema, which is meaning I am the one that provides what is required and protects what is there. But inasmuch as human being takes upon himself the responsibility of yoga kshema, well, fine, do that. If you take the responsibility, God says, I will let you take. Then you take the burden. Ultimately, He is the burden. And even when I think that I am taking the burden belongs to Him. Like this man who is riding on a camel with all his household goods. And after some time, because of the heat in the desert, the poor camel is tired and exhausted, and this man sees the camel is tired. And out of pity on the camel, he takes one huge bundle, and he is sitting on the camel along with the whole household. And he takes pity on the camel and takes one of the huge bundles and places on his head to relieve the burden of the camel. Not recognizing that he himself is a burden to the camel anyways. Similarly also, we put a lot of bundles on our head of responsibilities and doership and whatever, thinking that I am carrying that burden, not recognizing that I am myself being carried. But that is okay. So the first step is to take the righteous responsibility on the way to become free from all the responsibility, because in fact it is God who is doing everything. But Swami, you are talking like the person who is a fatalist. That means there is no self-effort at all. There is no purushartha. No free will. There is only destiny. Well, as long as we are ignorant, there is free will. And we have to use our free will properly. But the wise person has no free will at all. He is totally in the hands of destiny. So freedom from the need to exercise free will, as we said, is the real freedom. But before we can gain that kind of freedom, there is the need to exercise free will properly, so that one day we become free from the need to exercise free will. But Swami, how can that be? When everything is all right? Suppose the need to exercise free will is because everything is not all right now. It should be like this and it should not be like that. And since everything is not all right now, therefore there is need on my part to exercise free will. If a time comes when everything is all right, going this way also is all right and that way also is all right, like we tell the story of the sadhu with long hair. He is walking along the street. There is breeze coming from the other direction. So his hair is all falling on his face and therefore he cannot see. So what does he do? Turns around and walks the other direction. That's all. If walking this way also is all right and walking other way also is all right, let us say, then what can you do to that person? And similarly also for the wise person, this is also all right. If the thing is here, then also is all right. Is there, then also is all right. It is I am wearing is okay, somebody else is wearing is okay. I am eating is okay, somebody else is eating is okay. Suppose, sounds, doesn't sound practical and stuff like that, but all this business of practicality, that is what has made us samsari, But anyway, all the time being practical and pragmatic, and this is all insecurity. This is all right. As long as we are in security, we recognize it, we respect it, and we use our free will, no question about it. We use it properly. Lord Krishna says, use the free will in a responsible manner, as long as you are not comfortable. But he is teaching that someday we become so comfortable that it doesn't matter how things are. Sarvam khaloidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman. And therefore, going this way also is Brahman, going other way also is Brahman. Everything is Brahman. If this is so, because somebody asked Swami, Ram Tirtha, so how come you gave up your family? He was a man of family, with children also. How come you gave up your family? Became a sadhu to make the whole world my family, he says. And so that does happen. Then it's fine. If it is my house, does it matter if the couch is here or there? If it is within my house, when something is moved from here to there, it's okay. If the boundary of my house is only confined to this, then if it goes out of the boundary, then it's not okay. But suppose the boundary of my house stretches and includes everything, then what does it matter what goes where? This is how it is. This is how it is. This is the kind of wisdom that Lord Krishna imparts to us, and this is how much He wants us to grow. This is how much we have to grow. Is that my idea of self becomes so inclusive that it does not exclude anything, just anything. Swami, even evil also? Yes. The God that Vedanta presents is so exalted that he is not even opposed to evil, not opposed to anything. His stomach is so, Lord Ganesha has a big stomach because the whole cosmos is in his stomach. He can stomach anything. And similarly, God has such big stomach that good and evil, right and wrong, everything has a place. Everything is within him. He can stomach everything. So when Vedanta says that you are Brahman, that means that whether I am Brahman in the sense of being omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, that is not the thing. But I am Brahman in terms of being as large-hearted as Brahman is, all-inclusive, not excluding anything. Such a wonderful ideal is presented before us. And therefore, Vedantis are not concerned about whether I grow in my powers and stuff like that. That's a different matter. That's not Vedanta. There's another kind of samsara, of doing things so that I become powerful. So politicians get power outside and this fellow gets power within himself, which is all right, fine. Nothing wrong in it. But as Swamiji says, I can become mighty, I can never become almighty. And so, Vedantin does not bother to do those things. Because where it is possible, what is possible for us, that's what we do. That this large-heartedness is possible, this generosity is possible, this all-inclusiveness is possible, and that is what we call the self-growth. And that is what Lord Krishna is teaching us here. Sutyagi sattva samavishtaha medhavi chinna samshaya. And so when Lord Krishna is teaching sannyasa, he is not teaching sannyasa in terms of being inactive, non-participating. On the other hand, wise person can be very active, except that his activity does not involve any abhimanam, any sense of individuality, that I am doing it, it is just getting done. So that is the ultimate in surrender. The wisdom, in fact, just makes me so humble, and he is totally surrendered that he doesn't do anything. Who does it? It is God that does it. Who are you? I am merely an instrument in his hand. I am not even an instrument, I am not separate from him. But all that is not possible. And therefore, see, Lord Krishna keeps on saying all of this is because in India in particular, people may have a wrong notion that merely giving up the duties and adopting a certain lifestyle which is called sannyasa, that one becomes a sannyasi. One does not become a sannyasi by effort, by giving up action, by adopting a certain lifestyle. One becomes a sannyasi in spirit. And therefore, in Bhagavad Gītā, sannyasa is described all along, but sannyasa in spirit, not so much in form. As we said yesterday, Shankaracharya believes that sannyasa in form also is required. And he establishes a case as to how sannyasa in form also is required, but that only when its time comes. When the emotional maturity is there, when one has become free from any emotional support, when he has become free from every kind of a support or need, when one finds oneself self-sufficient, well, then he says you must take sannyasa. That's what Shankaracharya would say. But Lord Krishna would not say that, I guess. But Shankaracharya would say you must take sannyasa. Because then continue to perform the duties is in fact a distraction to you. Now that you possess a mind with which you can contemplate upon the self, that's what you should do. In short, you should do that the best that you can do at a given point in time, and when you gain that emotional maturity, then spending your time in performing duty is not necessary, because you can perform a superior kind of duty, and that is duty in terms of knowing the self. And the self-knowledge, that knowledge of self that you're talking about, is not the individual self anyway. It is the self of all. And therefore, it is ultimate in self-growth. So the first level of self-growth is karma yoga, by performing actions which are responsible and proper. And the second level of growth is by jnana yoga, by knowing the self, which is the self of all. And therefore in the 11th verse, Lord Krishna said, Deha Bhuta, one who has identification with the body, which is what one is born with. It's not that I have decided to be identified with the body. This is what I am born with. Because it is ignorance. Ignorance creates this false notion that I am the body, I am the mind. As we said, ignorance has two aspects. One aspect is that I do not know what I am. That I am actionless self, I do not know. And secondly, it brings about adhyasa or superimposition, and I take myself to be what I am not. And this body-mind complex which I am not is what I take myself to be, and that is how I entertain the sense of doership. So as long as the sense, so Deha Bhut meaning the one who is identified with the body-mind complex, meaning the one who entertains the notion that I am the doer. So Lord Krishna says, as long as, see what happens is that when I take this body as myself, then I have an abhimanam, I have a certain notion about myself. A self-consciousness about myself, that I am a man, I am a Brahmin, I am a sannyasi, I am a grihastha, I am a father, I am a mother, I am a son. Some kind of a notion or some kind of a complex I have. And when I have that, I cannot but do something. And when I am father, my son does something, I will be motivated, prompted to do something, compelled to do something. Swamiji, when your children do this, you have to do something. No? Swamiji, when your neighbor does, you have to do something. Swami, when this person does, you have to do something. But in the Western society, you have to do something. In India, it doesn't matter, let him do what he does, what do we care? But not here. No. He cannot do that. He cannot get away with this. That's not right. Which is good. I think it's a good thing that people consider it their responsibility, but sometimes over-responsibility also becomes a problem, Everywhere there should be boundaries, but then India doesn't matter. That's one extreme. Here everything matters, another extreme. I hope that we have a balance between the two, that something matters and something can be let go, But anyway, so this is how, as long as I have the self-consciousness that I am so and so, that I am the manager of this place, let us say. The moment I see something must be done. Something else. Different people have different response to the same thing, When I am walking by around, a lot of things you may see, nothing happens to you. Depends on who is walking by. But a gardener is walking by, he sees a little plant this way, immediately he is prompted, to straighten it, to do something. A carpenter is walking by, he sees a roof someplace, immediately he is prompted to do something. Depending on who you are, or what your notion about yourself is. If I am the owner of the house, well, something prompts me. I am not the owner, it doesn't matter. If I am living in a motel room, if a bulb does not work, doesn't work. If something is okay, all right. But if I am the owner of the house, bulb does not work, must be replaced right now. This has to be straightened. See how the consciousness that we have about ourselves automatically propels certain response from me. That's what Lord Krishna says, that as long as a person has a self-consciousnness that I am so and so, that is what is meant by Deha Bhrit. That is one identified with the body-mind complex. And that is going to bring about the self-consciousness, I am so and so. And as long as I look upon myself as so and so, then every situation will impel me to respond in a certain way. Either do something or withdraw. Both of them are actions. And so, tyaktum karmani naseshataha, it is not possible for this person to give up the actions altogether as long as self-consciousness is there. And so long, what should he do? Yes, to karma phalatyagi, satyagi te abhidhyate. So long, he Arjuna, do this. That give up the attachment to the karma phala. Start from there. So as we say, Lord Krishna recognizes attachment as the primary source of all the sorrow. The fundamental attachment is from ignorance. And this notion, identification with the body-mind complex, and notion that I am so and so. Then attachment of action, that I am the performer of action. And then attachment of result of action, I have produced this result. And then attachment of everything connected to result. This is my house, and then this is my garden, this is my flower, and this is my petal, and this is my fruit, and this is my bird, in my garden. So it keeps on expanding. It is this attachment which is the cause of all the sorrow, because when I am attached to something, then what it is becomes important to me. And then it must be only in keeping with when I am comfortable if that thing is favorable to me. I am not comfortable if it is not favorable to me. In somebody else's garden if there are weeds, it doesn't matter to me. In my garden there are weeds, it matters to me because it's my garden. The weeds matter to me because the mindness has come, understand? So anything becomes a problem when it gets connected to the I. And by attachment what I am doing is that things get connected to I. Lord Krishna wants us to slowly undo that process. To such an extent that even this body-mind complex also is not connected to I, which it is not. It is ignorance that all of these things are connected. And therefore the first step where we start is giving up attachment to the result of action, the rewards of action. Become, as less demanding as you can. Don't make demands. Become as giving as you can. And in return for giving, don't keep on making demands. Let giving be your privilege. That is called karma phalatyagi. Yes, to karma phalatyagi. So one who on the other hand, who is tyagi, who is renounce the karma phala, meaning renounce the identification with the karma phala, result of action. One who is non-demanding with reference to result of action, sahatyagi te abhidhyate, he is called the renunciate. So Lord Krishna says the definition of renunciation varies depending upon the person. Everybody should become renunciate. But what sort of renunciation I should have depends upon where I am, depending upon my level of maturity. And therefore, as long as I look upon myself as an individual and I am self-conscious as an individual, so long the kind of renunciation that I should have is of this nature, that I should renounce the attachment to the rewards of action, not attachment to action. Because that attachment to action is required right now. The responsibility of action is required right now because it makes me free from the irresponsibility. Then I become a responsible person, I can drop responsibility of action also. Then I become a Vividisha sannyasi, become a renunciate. And then, in process of study and everything, I even drop the identification with the doership. And I become completely free. And this is the process of progressive freedom. Now, किम पुनः तत्प्रयोजनम यत् सर्वकर्म परित्यागः स्यादिति. So why Lord Krishna are you so emphasizing about renunciation of action? What do we get by that? So that is what is being said in the 12th verse. अनिष्टमिष्टं मिश्रञ्च अनिष्टमिष्टं मिश्रञ्च त्रिविधं कर्मणः फलं भवत्यत्यागिनां प्रेत्य न तु सन्न्यासिनां क्वचित् अनिष्टम इष्टम मिश्रम च त्रिविधम कर्मणः फलम. Karmana phalam trividham. The result of the karma, result of the action is threefold. Anishtam, undesirable. Ishtam, desirable. Mishram, a mixture. Swami always quotes this Mishram, Everybody is Mishra. Everybody is Mishra means what? The mixture of Mishram is mixture. So human being is a mixture of desirable and undesirable. What is anishtam? Undesirable is the result of what we call the papa, the sinful action. What is sinful action? An unbecoming action, put it this way. So when a person performs an action that deliberately performs an action that is unbecoming, when a person deliberately violates the order, if unknowingly violates the order is a different thing. Like in a sleep also, you kick somebody, somebody is sleeping beside you, you kick that person, so you're not liable, you're not held responsible because you're not conscious. But when you're awake and you do that, that would bring a different consequence. And so when a person deliberately violates the order, that is called the sin, if you want to use that word, or unbecoming action, a wrong action. See, question of right and wrong comes when there is a law. If there is no law, then there is nothing right and nothing wrong. So in the Gurukulam, when we take a walk, that's in the campus itself. Some people, there is a road, there is a pathway around, circling the whole Gurukulam. Some people walk clockwise, some people walk anti-clockwise. I asked them, why do you walk this way? Why not, Swamiji? That's true also, because there is no law that you should walk only one side. And therefore, you can do it either way. But when you are circumambulating the Lord, let us say, then there is a way of doing it. You must only circumambulate in the clockwise direction, in the direction of sun. There is clockwise, the direction of sun. If you do it other way, that will be wrong, because there is a way of doing it. If there is no law, if there is no particular way, then everything is okay. Now when you circumambulate Lord Shiva, then there is yet another caution to exercise, which we don't often exercise, but traditionally, when you are circumambulating Lord Shiva, you see Lord Shiva, of course, this is the image here, but usually Lord Shiva is always in the form of an image, in linga, as linga. And then there is a stand on which that linga is placed, and then the water flows down. So usually the linga faces east, and the yoni faces the north, and that water always is discharged in northern direction. So this is how it goes. So when you are circumambulating Lord Shiva, then you should not cross the passage of water, which Abhisheka water. So you know how they do this circumambulation? They start from here, go this way and back, and this way and back. Because they do not want to cross the passage of water. If you cross, it is wrong. So what is right and what is wrong, you have to know, of course, But the point is that when there is a law or when there is a rule, then following the rule becomes right and violating the rule becomes wrong. Similarly also, there is a rule in this universe. There is an order. There is a harmony. And therefore, an action performed in keeping with that order or harmony would be a right action. And an action performed deliberately violating the harmony would be called a wrong action. And wrong action will bring its consequences. Although people here in this world may not recognize that. And therefore I can escape the consequences here. But I cannot escape the consequences in the universal scheme of things. And therefore one has to, one is accountable for whatever one does. So anishtam, a person, when what we call an unbecoming or wrong action is performed, in violation to the order, it brings about result which is in nature of pain. On the other hand, when I perform an action that is in keeping with the order, it is called the righteous action. It is called the right action. And that also brings me reward in terms of pleasure. And mixture. Some actions are right and some actions are wrong. That is called mixture. And thus it is said in the scriptures that after the death of this individual, depending upon what kind of results or actions is accumulated. If there is an accumulation of predominantly what we call right actions, then he accumulated a lot of punya, a lot of virtue, and he gets qualified to go into the realms such as heavens, where he will enjoy the pleasures as a result of all the good actions he has done. If the fellow is violated, his free will, then the consequences will be he will be born in the lower species, which are all full of pain. And so, the Deva Yoni, or he may go to hell and things like that. He may go to hell, he may be born as animals and whatever it is, where there is predominance of pain. And if there is a mixture of the two, then he is born as a human being. So human being is a mixture of punya and papa. Why should it be? I don't know. I think, but anyway, that's how it is. That's how they explain. That's the reason why there is pain in our life. So whatever pain that we experience in our life is all result of some karma that we have performed. It sounds very cruel, but that's how it has to be understood. Even though it appears that somebody is inflicting me pain, but we would only say that the one who appears to inflict pain to me is just instrumental in causing a situation which was destined to be created for me, so that I had to go through that experience. And therefore, whatever experience I am going through, I am destined to go through depending upon the action that I perform, and the world becomes responsible in some way or the other in creating the situation. This becomes easy. This is nice, because then we don't blame anybody. I don't blame my mother, and I don't blame my father and my uncle and the society and other people, because I say that all of them are like, what do you call them? Like the puppets. All of them are like puppets. And so they do whatever it is they are inspired to do. And so they create the situation for me so that I can go through these experiences which I was destined to go through. This is one explanation of the experiences that happened to us, and that continue to happen to us. Because naturally otherwise there's a lot of anger and a lot of pain on account of what people has done to me, but this one can resolve that pain in the understanding that this was meant to happen. So that person became an instrument in just making it happen, and therefore if I were to direct my anger at somebody, not to that person, but direct it to some actions I may have performed. Swami, does it mean I should direct anger at myself? No. Because those things were done because of ignorance. So I can direct my anger at ignorance. And what's the use of directing anger at ignorance? Because anger is a product of ignorance anyway. And therefore, that way nobody is to blame except ignorance. So as far as Vedantin is concerned, the only thing to be blamed, if there is anything, is ignorance. All evil is product of ignorance. Wherever evil is in myself or anybody else or anywhere else is all product of ignorance. And what can you do with an ignorant person? Your code of law also will not punish him because he is ignorant. And therefore no blaming. So this is what this law of karma helps us to do. Not that, oh, this is my karma, my prarabdha, I keep on blaming myself. That is also not the right thing to do. Blame ignorance if you have to. But why ignorance? Nobody knows. And therefore, God, blame God. No point in that also. Because only ignorance is to be blamed. Anyway, so this is the threefold. Karma trividam phalam. Lord Krishna says this threefold is the result of the action. And one is accountable for all the actions when bhavati atyaginam pretya. Pretya meaning after death. Pretya after death, atyaginam trividam karma phalam bhavati. For those who are atya, non-renunciates. So who is a renunciate? So anyway, so those are non-renunciates or unrenunciates, I don't know. So non-renunciates, they are stuck with this threefold result of the action. Nadu sannyasinam kvachit, but this threefold result does not come to the renunciates. That's the reason why people want to become renunciates. So, see the second line of this verse, bhavati atyaginam pretya nadu sannyasinam kvachita. Atyaginam, those who are not tyagi. Who is called a tyagi? Look at the previous verse. Yastu karma tyagi satyagi vidhiyate. Who is called a tyagi? See, Lord Krishna gave the definition of a tyagi. The one who has renounced karma phala, one who has renounced the rewards of the action, he is a tyagi. Not a tyagi, he is responsible for the result of the action, he is accountable. One who is a tyagi is not. But that tyagi is only karma yogi. So Lord Krishna means to say that a karma yogi becomes free from the result of the actions after dying, that means he becomes liberated. See, after dying, if a person does not have the experience and result, then there is no embodiment. The reason why we take this embodiment is because we have to experience the result of the action that we have performed in the past. If, however, I have no actions, no results to experience, then there is no need to take another body, then I am liberated. So when it is said that those who are sannyasis are resolved, or they are released, or absolved, let us say, from the need to experience the action, that means the sannyasis are those who are liberated. That they do not have to take another embodiment after dying. But those who are not tyagis are not liberated. So somebody said, wait a minute, see, Lord Krishna himself has given the definition of a tyagi. And who is a tyagi? Karma yogi. That is why you have to study Bhashya. We are not going into this technicality here, but I thought I just may mention this technicality at this point here. There are many technicalities that have gone by. And you see, if you study the Bhashya, then Bhashyakara is so particular about defining and explaining every word. And therefore, when it was said tyagi, in the earlier satyagi vidhiyate, karma apisana is stuti abhiprayana. The Bhashyakara explained that in the 11th verse, this karma yogi was called a tyagi. Karma yogi was called a renunciate. Shankaracharya said that tyagi or renunciate is not in a primary sense, is merely to extol him, merely to encourage him. So whether a certain designation is given in primary sense, or the designation is given to encourage him, to extol him, So when a karma yogi is called tyagi or renunciate, does Lord Krishna mean that a karma yogi is a renunciate in a primary sense? Shankaracharya said no. Lord Krishna calls him tyagi or renunciate only in a secondary sense, because an element of renunciation is there. Karma yogi is performing action, has a sense of doership also. But he has renounced something. Why did he renounce? His attachment to the reward of the action is what he has renounced. And therefore, an element of renunciation is there. so that in course of time he will become a full renunciate. He is a renunciate of the first stage. Someday he will renounce the actions, also become renunciate of the second stage. And someday he will renounce also the sense of doership, become renunciate in a full measure, primary sense. But since he is on his way to that renunciation, therefore he is just praised here and he is called renunciate to glorify even the renunciation of the result of the action that he has done, to glorify that he is here extolled as a renunciate. But he is not a renunciate in a primary sense. He is yet to become renunciate. So therefore, so then coming to the verse 12, nadu sannyasinam kvachita. Sannyasinam is those who are renunciates in a primary sense. Meaning those who are renunciates with reference to the sense of doership. He alone is called sannyasi in a primary sense. So in the Bhagavad Gītā, Lord Krishna uses the word sannyasi in primary sense as well as in the secondary sense. Therefore, when you study the scriptures, it becomes very important to understand the purport of the word. In what meaning the word is used is very important. Therefore, we should know the intention of the speaker. Because a word can have a grammatical meaning, and word can have a conventional meaning also. And still the speaker may have used that word in his own way. And therefore, we have to determine what is the purport or what is the intention of the speaker in using the word. That is the reason why the commentators are required to tell us in what sense Lord Krishna uses a given word in a given verse. So word sannyasa is used by Lord Krishna in a primary sense in terms of a person who is renunciate by virtue of knowledge. One who has abidance in knowledge. And he is a sannyasi in a primary sense. What we call vidvat sannyasi. Other people are called sannyasi. A karma yogi, however, is called sannyasi in more than one places. In the first verse of 6th chapter, anashritah karma phalam karyam karma karodhyah sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnarna chakriya. In the first verse of the 6th chapter, the karma yogi who performs his bounden duty without demanding any reward for that, he is a sannyasi as well as a yogi. He was extolled there by calling him sannyasi and yogi. But there the word sannyasi and yogi was used not in a primary sense, in a secondary sense. But to extol him. Then I want to become a sannyasi. Everybody wants to become a sannyasi, then do this. This is how to encourage a person, he is called sannyasi. And here also Lord Krishna uses the word in the 12th verse, nadu sannyasinam kvachita. A sannyasi becomes liberated or free from consequence of all the actions. Which sannyasi? Not that sannyasi which was in the secondary sense, but sannyasi in the primary sense. Atyagena, which tyagi? Not the tyagi of the 11th verse where the word tyagi is used in a secondary sense, but the word tyagi or renunciate in a primary sense. See, if you don't know this, then this is very confusing. In 11th verse, Lord Krishna defines the tyagi. In the 12th verse, he uses the word tyagi also. In 11th verse, the word tyagi is used in the secondary sense. In the 12th verse, the word tyagi is used in the primary sense. That's the reason why they say, Acharyavan Purusha Veda. Who can understand the secret of the scriptures? Acharyavan Purusha, one who is fortunate enough to have an acharya, fortunate enough to have a teacher. So because a teacher is required to unfold the significance of these statements. And so Lord Krishna says, one who is a sannyasi, meaning one who is a wise person, one who has become free from the sense of doership. He is no more accountable for any results or actions at all, and therefore he does not have to take a new body. If the actions remain in my account, then I must take another embodiment to exhaust the result of the actions. But the one person, the sannyasi, is the one who has become free from sense of doership, and therefore he no more is accountable for any actions performed in the past, and therefore he is liberated while living. He is what we call Jivan Muktaha, liberated while living. Whereas anybody else, Atyagina, those who have not risen to the level of having given up the sense of doership, all of them have to be born, depending upon the kind of actions they have performed. And we'll explain in the next class that the birth, of course, is in different ways depending on what I have done. All of this has been discussed in the Bhagavad Gītā in the earlier chapters, that what happens to a karma yogi, what happens to a vividisha sannyasi, what happens to a samsari, what happens to an evil-minded person. So, depending upon what a person is, accordingly the next verse is going to be. But then the next embodiment will be. That means the samsara or the bondage will continue. And bondage will come to an end only when one gains liberation from the sense of doership. By knowing the self that is actionless. And therefore, that's the highest. The first is the sannyasi. Below that is a vividisha sannyasi, person who is pursuing the knowledge. What happens when he dies? If he dies before gaining the moksha, then the 6th chapter explains what happens to him. That he gets appropriate embodiment where he continues his pursuit. Because the one who has started on this path can never fall back. Nahi kalyana krit kaschit durgatim tad gacchati. Lord Krishna gave an assurance. The one who has started on this path of kalyanam, there can never be a loss for him. He can never fall back from his status. He will continue to rise. If the person is a karma yogi, 3rd level, karma yogi, then what? Well, karma yogi also will be born appropriately to continue his pursuit. Person is performing action, he is a good person, but is performing action as desire prompted. He will go to heaven, so Chandraloka, experience the result of the actions and come back and start all over again. Or the person who is violating the values, he will go to Naraka or he will go to other yonis. This is how the different people will get different kinds of embodiments. And they will continue. So thus we accept what we call the rebirth, what they call here reincarnation, the rebirth. As long as my agenda is not complete, as long as I don't gain total freedom, so long my agenda is not complete, so long this pursuit will continue. So only reason why I am born is I am born with agenda, and that I want to be free. If the agenda is not complete, I'll continue to strive and take embodiment until that freedom is gained. And so Lord Krishna says, therefore, one should become a sannyasi in a primary sense, because then alone one is totally free. Bhindyate hridaya granthi chidyante sarvasamshayaha shiyante chasya karmani tasmin drushte paravare. Mundakopanishad says that when one sees the para and the avara, sees the identity between the jiva and Ishvara, that is one that discovers oneself as Brahman, then becomes free from all the doubts are cut asunder, all the complexes are gone, and he becomes free from all kinds of karma. Sanchita karma, agami karma, prarabdha karma, all this karma arithmetic is given, accumulated actions. And prarabdha means actions that have borne their fruit, agami karma actions that are going to be performed. And since he is free from sense of doership, even while performing actions, he does not perform, no agami karma. Since he is no more a doer, therefore all the sanchita karmas are gone to the account of the person who has done it, he is no more that person. And when it comes to prarabdha, he goes through it without being identified with it. And that is how the arithmetic of karma is explained, that the wise person is free from all the karma. He is therefore liberated while living. Who? That is called a sannyasi. He is called Jivan Mukta. He is the one who attained that goal. And that should be the goal that we have, attaining sannyasa of that nature. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Vadarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyoma Vadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.